We may live under different roofs, but we share the same sunlight.
Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a greater person of yourself. Martin Luther King Jr.
The word equality shows up too much in our founding documents for anyone to pretend it's not the American way. Martha Plimpton.
Freedom, in any case, is only possible by constantly struggling for it. Albert Einstein.
The year is 1776. I write a newspaper that recounts the events of my small town, though the daily news isn't very exciting to write. I must do my best to avoid writing about the things I truly care about. There's currently no law protecting me from writing about government matters. It is treason to protest about the king. But when I heard of an upcoming revolution a while back, I took hold of my pen. Today, I hold a stack of papers close to my chest. Inscribed on them, in bold black ink, are my wishes for the future of this country. I know sharing these wishes with my audience will get me in a great deal of trouble, but I open my printing press without hesitation. This is my freedom. By Summer Jones.
Thought of equality. As if it harmed me, giving others the same chances and rights as myself, as if it were not indispensable to my own rights, that others possess the same. Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass.
The fundamental premise that all are equal under and before the law, and all are entitled to the equal protection and the equal benefit of the law, and when that is put in place, the law enforcement becomes manageable because just laws foster compliance, do not require coercion.
You have the right to speak your mind. You never have to be quiet. The First Amendment in this country gives you the right to speak. It gives you the freedom to protest and worship, and it does not keep you captive. Believe in what you want. You don't have to believe in other people's opinion or in the religion. You can believe in what you choose. Choose the religion you want. The First Amendment protects it in this country. By Jessica Jimenez.
The year is 1786. A dark and eerie night was upon the falling sun. Snowfall began on my way to my loft. The slow humming of the bugs began to overwhelm me as the clicking and clacking of the horse's feet continued its path. We finally came to a halt and I made my way to the door. Candle in hand, I hurried to the entryway and made my way to the main room. I started a fire and began on dinner. Everything was pitch black except for the bright fire in the middle of the room. After finishing up eating, I made my way to the bedroom where I laid my eyes to rest for the night. Suddenly, an ominous light in the distance woke me. 4 men on horseback scurrying to my loft. I quickly got dressed and made my way downstairs. Without a moment's hesitation, the door busts open, and the cold breeze sent shivers down my spine. They were sent down to search for any unlawful items in my possession. I asked under whose jurisdiction, and they were under, and they instantly tore my place apart. There was nothing I could do but stand there in horror watching these men. After an hour, they found nothing and left without speaking. When they walked out, I wrote a document to prevent such acts from happening without proper jurisdiction. The bright glow of the sun awakened me from my slumber. I walked out into the yard and started my journey to freedom. By Austin Schneider.
By the force of our demands, our determination, and our numbers, we shall splinter the segregated South into 1,000 pieces and put it back together in the image of God and democracy. John Lewis.
I brought my kids in for a talk. They asked if they were going to get the police talk, but I told them it would be a much different talk. This is Washington, D.C., and we are right in the smack of the 1960 presidential election, and that Kennedy guy is winning. But I didn't know how to tell my eldest kid that he wouldn't be voting this year. I remember my youngest asking, why couldn't he vote? And I knew I had to be strong because it was not going to be easy to tell my African American son that he wouldn't be contributing to his country. I recall saying something along the lines of, we are not considered when it comes to voting for this country's president. We don't get a say in our government. I remember my son, after giving him this talk, coming to me every day after school to ask how this could be changed. At first, I would tell him that there was nothing we could do, but my son refused to believe that. After a while of hearing his explanations and evidence of our freedom of assembly right, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could change it. I started going to the library after work every week and reading up on how to build a response so I can get what we desired, what my son deserves. I remember my coworkers telling me that it would never work since the government thought of us as the expendable group and that they cared little to none about our mistreatment. I am holding these assemblies so I can convince you of how we need to come together to change the rules. This is a dangerous job for me and my family. Yesterday, I got fired from my job of 15 years and my kids got expelled from their schools. They really thought they could stop us, but we have gotten accustomed to the hate and jealousy we receive. It's our daily dose that we get whether we like it or not. Whites looked at us differently, and so did our own, but we knew what we were doing was for the good of our city.
A man who believes in freedom would do anything under the sun to acquire or preserve his freedom. Malcolm X.
Equality is not a concept. It's not something we should be striving for. It's a necessity. Equality is like gravity. We need it to stand on this earth as men and women. Joss Whedon.
We as women should not be denied the right to vote because of our gender. We shall not only be seen as housewives, we should be allowed to vote because we are human and deserve our fundamental rights. Women are tired of not being heard, of not having a voice. In the days of the suffragists, women began having conventions, riots, and protests to bring awareness about allowing women to vote. Women of all types would gather together to give speeches, to encourage and persuade others about how important it was for women to vote. Sadly, many women of color were discriminated against and rejected by the white men, even though they were fighting for the same rights. Carrie Chapman Catt, Mary Church Terrell, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were the leaders of the movement in the United States. All of these women never gave up and kept bringing awareness to the problem. After 40 long years, it was finally approved in 1920 by Karina Ramirez.
As I'm walking down the street, I keep replaying the thought over and over in my head. Us women finally being able to vote and actually having a say in things. I mean, there are still people who think the new law shouldn't be allowed. Of course, when I say people, I mean men. They just don't like the fact that we can actually do something like them for once. I mean, as I'm going about my daily errands, I overheard this. Women are allowed to vote in elections now. What do we think about that? The man behind the counter looks at me, and I definitely look back at him. I put my things on the counter as I continue to look at him. He eventually breaks eye contact and starts to put my things in a bag. As I turn around, I heard him mumble something along the lines of, "First they let them vote? What's next?" I wanted to stop and put him in his place, but all that would do was cause a scene. Plus, I wouldn't want them to take away my chance to vote tomorrow. So I just pretended I didn't hear him and kept walking out the store. As I'm walking home, I see men looking at the women, looks of disdain, as if they were saying, "You shouldn't be able to do that or do anything, really." I know I'm not the only one who notices, but we ignore it. I mean, what can we do about it? I push those thoughts away and just think about tomorrow, and I can't wait. By Yulisa Lopez.
This is why we all fight so hard, not just for the vote, but for an equal opportunity in the world. A vote is a voice. Sharon Biggs Waller, a mad, wicked Foley.
It was 1920. Women had just been granted the right to vote on the 18th of August. the amendment had been ratified. My mother was so excited. For the first time in history, women were more than just a husband's wife, but a citizen, someone of importance that contributed to the outcome of elections. They had an impact now. They had a voice now. They had power. But not everyone. Even though the law had passed and women could vote, black women could not. Haters would do many things to stop them, like making them take tedious tests of literacy and pay preposterous poll taxes. My mom was saddened that even though they had fought together for equality, there were people out there fighting against it. For what? What was there to gain? Intimidated of the world becoming a better place? In 1965, a law was passed that made it illegal to play out voting practices that were discriminatory and obstructed people's rights to vote. There had been great advancements in equality for gender and race, but we still have a long way to go, kids. We must prevail. By Serena Yeager.
Once I stepped into the voting booth, my mind changed. Not just because I was voting, but because I had an opportunity to change what could happen in the world without getting judged by my sex. Finally, knowing that I'm able to vote and that it won't be denied is a great feeling to have. It was my first time voting. This is a big step for me. It can change my life. Looking at the paper made me proud of what I was about to achieve, and I was happy for what was going to come. I am proud. I am proud. By Justin Garcia.
I know you won't understand right now, but it's so much more than us finally getting the right to vote. It's a step forward in this world for you. You're gonna grow up in a completely different world and society for women than I did. Yes. Slowly but surely, women will be able to do anything they desire without misogynists and the patriarchy holding us back. Yes, they will. Our guaranteed right to vote is a huge blessing. And it means that our voices will be heard. I did not get to grow up in a world or be raised in one where I could do anything other than raise children and cook and clean. I thought my daughter would grow up in that world too. But our right to vote gives me hope for the world that she'll grow up in. Perhaps by the time she's able to vote, she'll be in a completely different time. She might be able to have a quality education. She might be able to get a job before marriage. She might be able to experience genuine happiness. As she grows up, I'm going to teach her the importance of voting, the importance of using her voice. My mother taught me how to cook and clean and sew. My mother taught me to stay at home, but I will teach my daughter the opposite. There's so much more to life than keeping the home spick and span with that fresh food aroma swirling around the house all day. A mother can dream, though. This mother will dream.
I will never forget this day. As a child, my only dream was equality. I'm 70 years old and I'm here, standing near all the women who deserve equality and will never give up. The laughter and happiness could be observed miles away, but others still cry, because they know we still have more to do. I can barely walk, but today my legs were like the legs of a teenager. My bones were not hurting. It felt like if all my happiness had invaded my body and made a magical potion for all my aches and pains. I don't have words to express what I feel. It's the biggest step for women, and I'm alive to see it happen. Could you imagine all your life having no say in anything, just being there to serve others? Everyone telling you what you are, what you're meant to be, just because you were born a girl? This meant no opportunities for you. The best you could get was marrying someone who would give you a decent life. But now, that has all changed. We will be successful. We will ask for more, because we deserve to choose what life we want. Now, my daughters and her daughters' voice will be heard.
Women need to keep asking for what they're worth, and leaders need to make sure women are paid the same, whether they ask for it or not. Michaela Kiner.
2 decades of fighting the good fight, fighting the cause. and in case I haven't been clear, the cause is that one half of the human race is given the same basic equal rights that the other half enjoys, or not given, given back. That is not a milestone, 20 years, that I intend to go unnoticed. I want to make some noise. I want to make a joyful noise. I want to make too much noise. I want the neighbors to complain. I'm tired of being polite about something that matters so much.
Why is it that as a gender we are viewed as inferior? Why is it that toxic masculinity has stood in the way of female vote? Although birthed from the uterus of a female, the male ego has a tendency to cloud judgment and perceive women to only be good for fulfilling roles of housewives and trophy wives. The only answer I can offer is one related to old-fashioned thinking. Growing up in a Latino household, I have seen the women in my family expected to do the cleaning, cooking, and tend to the children, all while men are off at work. I viewed firsthand the expectations of the shoulders of women that they are demanded to fulfill. Contrary, telenovelas that played in the background of my childhood portrayed women as bombshells who got what they wanted through their male counterparts. As a small child, I didn't quite appreciate all that women did, nor did I even notice a glimpse of a double standard. Through wide, innocent eyes, I could not fathom gender inequality. Why is that? As children, we have no judgment of the world, much less feel one gender to be greater, or so I thought. As a cheery and excitable preschooler, I quickly came to learn that children are very susceptible to adults. I distinctly recall playing house with my friends, except a boy said, "The girls stay cooking only." The other boy shrugged and played with toys outside, and the girls beside me nodded along. This didn't sit well with my childhood self. I didn't know that was my expected role. I didn't want to cook. Play kitchen was not a destiny I would be willing to accept. I remember telling my teacher and her instantly replying, "Boys will be boys, hon." Why is that? I did end up going out to play with the boys, not without odd looks from the girls. That same day, I watched the boy's mother pick him up. She was in a hurry, wearing a tattered apron, and she said, "Let's go. Mommy needs to finish dinner before Daddy comes home." Of course, I did not connect the dots, or even understand that his own household heavily influenced his young mind. As any kid does, I completely forgot about the moment, but as I grew older, it resonated with me. With age, the blindfold of confusion has been lifted. I can now see why that boy said what he had. Perhaps it's made me into the person that I am. I will always speak about sexism, because times are changing. They have been changing, but they haven't completely changed yet. The world still holds women to a double standard. We may only hope that as the future arrives, women are viewed as individuals. That is my dream. By Tiffany Ariano.
Men justify the women taking care of the kids and the house and holding down a job because, after all, men are the primary breadwinners in the family. But that's because we pay women less. Men claiming to have superiority over women because men make more money than they do is like claiming you're stronger than a lion that's been tranquilized and put in a cage. Sure, you're in a better spot now. How about we unchain the beast and see what happens? Trey Crowder.
We will not stay silent any longer. Each and every one of us has been through a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. But here we are, strong, free, beautiful. We will always fight for each other, for our safety and security in this country. Love is love, and we are people just like everyone else. It is time for the world to see us as we actually are. Magic. Everyone here in this crowd today has been fighting for our cause since birth, whether we knew it or not. It took me quite some time to realize that everyone is in this together, that loving someone regardless of their gender or sexual orientation should be the norm. The xenophobic ideas that I used to hold have been replaced with love for myself and each and every one of you. Growing up with people who look down upon anyone not like them, I had a hard time finding who I truly was. I wasn't the perfect daughter they wanted, never wanted to be an optometrist like they hoped. Instead, I rebelled and dyed my hair, shaved it off, and moved to Los Angeles. When I got there, I met some people. Some of the best people I've ever met, actually. And they're here today, in the crowd, fighting alongside you so gay people can be treated like everyone else. We stand here today so when I walk down the street hand in hand with my girlfriend, I don't have to turn around to make sure we're not being followed. We stand here today so that across the US, gay, trans, panic defense can no longer be used as a valid reason to kill someone. We stand here today so that our brothers and sisters no longer live with terrible diseases and illnesses because trans people could be denied health care. By Olivia Paredes about Sylvia Rivera.
I always found it funny how hypocritical people can be sometimes. One moment, they'll be preaching about the greatness of equality and the world we live in, and the next, they'll be glaring at you from across the hall, spitting insults like you're the personification of the dirt beneath their feet. Politicians especially love doing this. They'll sit all high and mighty as they boast about their accomplishments and how far their country has come in terms of equality. But then they'll turn around and not even bat an eye as people are fired from their job just for being themselves. Now, I'd have this job for well over a year by the time my husband and I had gotten engaged. As to be expected, I was on cloud 9 for days afterward and immediately started working even harder than before to try and save up for our wedding the following March. As happy as I was very quick to tell all my friends and coworkers about the news. Most of them were thrilled and congratulated me, as anyone would. But apparently, as I learned later that week, that some people had reported me to human resources. My boss fired me that Monday for making my coworkers uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? Right. My love makes them uncomfortable. There's no way that's legal, right? I told myself as I called and complained to nearly everyone with any sort of authority over my old job. I tried and ultimately failed to pull together a lawsuit. And while technically I was correct, that didn't mean anyone cared. Every phone call was met with denial as everyone I spoke to claimed to not have any power over what had happened. They were unable to do anything about my boss and the unfair grounds I was fired on, and were unable to get me my job back. A few of my coworkers tried to defend me, but couldn't do much in fear of losing their jobs as well. How could something like this happen? How could anybody let something like this happen? By Isabella Smith.
My wife's the reason anything gets done. She nudges me towards promise by degrees. She is a perfect symphony of one. Our son is her most beautiful reprise. We chase the melodies that seem to find us until they're finished songs and start to play. When senseless acts of tragedy remind us that nothing here is promised, not one day. This show is proof that history remembers. We live through times when hate and fear seem stronger. We rise and fall in light from dying embers, remembrances that hope and love last longer. And love is 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 love cannot be killed or swept aside. By Lin-Manuel Miranda, 2016.
When I was 13 years old, my beautiful mother and my father moved me from a small conservative Mormon town in San Antonio, Texas to California, where I heard the story of Harvey Milk, and that story gave me hope. It gave me the hope to live my life. It gave me the hope to live freely, the hope that maybe one day I could live openly as who I am and fall in love, maybe even get married, but most importantly, if Harvey hadn't been taken from us 30 years ago, he would want me to tell each and every one of you gay and lesbian kids out there tonight that no matter who talks down upon you, whether it be your churches, your government, or even your own family, that you are beautiful creatures of value. And no matter what anyone says, God does love you. And I promise you, very soon, that we will have equal rights across this great country of ours. Dustin Lance Black.
The thing is, we never needed anyone's consent to get married. What is happening is that the established powers are starting to realize how much of jerks they have looked like for not acknowledging our marriages and our human rights, and we are starting to receive the rights we were always entitled to. Therefore, no one is giving or allowing us anything. We are simply and powerfully starting to reclaim what has always been ours. The moralistic patriarchy has made this a long and bloody battle, but the concept has always been simple, and I'm glad it is finally sinking in. We are here. We have always been here. We're not looking to go anywhere, and trying to suppress us under false puritanical mores is not smart and will not make us go away. It is not just about the LGBTQ communities, but also all suppressed minorities. If you listen closely, you can hear the subtle but real shifting of the winds to a more enlightened and egalitarian society. It won't happen without work, and it won't happen without intelligence. Never stop learning, never stop growing, never be ashamed because you're different, and never stop knowing that there is power in community. Christina Marrero.
It takes no compromise to give people their rights. It takes no money to respect the individual. It takes no political deal to give people freedom. It takes no survey to remove repression. Harvey Milk.
The Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution guarantees marriage equality. In doing so, they've reaffirmed that all Americans are entitled to the equal protection of the law. That all people should be treated equally, regardless of who they are or who they love. This decision will end the patchwork system we currently have. It will end the uncertainty hundreds of thousands of same-sex couples face from not knowing whether their marriage, legitimate in the eyes of one state, will remain if they decide to move to or even visit another. This ruling will strengthen all of our communities by offering to all loving same-sex couples the dignity of marriage across this great land. In my second inaugural address, I said that if we are truly created equal, then surely the love we commit to another must be equal as well. It is gratifying to see that principle enshrined into law by this decision. This ruling is a victory for Jim Obergefell and the other plaintiffs in the case. It's a victory for gay and lesbian couples who have fought so long for their basic civil rights. It's a victory for their children, whose families will now be recognized as equal to any other. It's a victory for the allies, the friends, and supporters who have spent years, even decades, working and praying for change to come. And this ruling is a victory for America. This decision affirms what millions of Americans already believe in their hearts. When all Americans are treated as equal, we are all more free.
We must beware of any attempt to make hatred in any form the basis of action. Most emphatically, each of us needs to stand up for his own rights. All men and all groups of men are bound to retain their self-respect and demanding this same respect from others, to see that they are not injured and that they have secured to them the fullest liberty of thought and action. But to feed a fat grudge against others, while it may or may not harm them, it should in the long run to do infinitely greater harm to the man himself. Theodore Roosevelt.
Very curious, I still can't see what the money means about by me. Using money good.
I'm walking the streets of LA to get justice for a man that was brutally beaten. Beaten by the people who took an oath to serve and to protect. In every direction there is broken glass, fire, pepper spray, and people screaming for help. With every minute that passed, a store was looted, people beating up the helpless, innocent people's cars were set on fire, and even more innocent people were arrested or sprayed with tear gas. Some people thought violence was the answer, but in reality, it just made things worse. This is the difference between protesting and rioting. One is about keeping the peace and about making your voice heard, and the other is about destroying buildings and cars to make people feel the rage that you feel. Not many days after the trial, Another unpredicted incident happened. A 15-year-old was murdered over orange juice. There was more rage in the city of angels. There was much rage and hate building up in people's hearts that they didn't care what kind of property they destroyed. Anything that they could see, they let their anger destroy. The day soon turned dark because of the smoke from the fires. With nighttime approaching, the sky turned red and ashes were falling. Police had to retreat because there was more rioters than officers. The more destruction that happened, the more pressure the mayor had on deciding how to keep the people of their city safe and put an end to the violence. Maybe if there was justice to begin with, it could have been avoided. By Esteban Aguilar.
It's hard to live in the United States. It's hard because people think we are different. They view us as not the same as they are. We were slaves for the whites back in 1868, but even now, people discriminate. It isn't fair the way blacks are treated in the U.S. It wasn't fair then, and it isn't fair now. The 14th Amendment is for everyone to have equal protection of rights if you are a citizen of the United States. This amendment should show people that everyone, every person, every race has the same rights as anyone else. The opening sentence of Section 1 of the 14th Amendment defines U.S. citizenship. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. With this amendment in place, we the people should take it seriously and be united as one. By Christian Contreras.
The real enemy of my people is here. I will not disgrace my religion, my people, or myself by becoming a tool to enslave those who are fighting for their own justice, freedom, and equality. If I thought the war was going to bring freedom and equality to 22 million of my people, they wouldn't have to draft me. I'd join tomorrow. I have nothing to lose by standing up for my beliefs. So I'll go to jail. So what? We've been in jail for 400 years. Muhammad Ali.
I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a rainy afternoon and I was rushing home, hoping to beat the clock and get home by 6:30 in spite of the traffic. At the time, I was a college student living on my own in the projects. It wasn't the best situation, but I knew I had to do what was needed to be successful no matter the circumstances. I was so focused on getting home on time, I disregarded the speed limit. I got pulled over. At the time, I was petrified. I knew from the time I was 12, all the stories I've heard from family members of the harm coming to Black people. Videos were all over the media. As he approached my window, I reminded myself of everything my mother had taught me. Show respect, be truthful, and follow directions so you can get home safely. Throughout all those questions asked, I remained respectful, truthful, and even extremely apologetic, hoping that this day wouldn't be my last. The officer didn't seem satisfied with any of my answers and was still suspicious of me. All he could do was give me a ticket and allow me to be on my way. As he went to leave, he turned back and reminded me that he would be watching me. I was shocked at his words. He said this as if he was almost certain I was a criminal, but he knew nothing about me. By Samara Ramo.
Sitting here in this cell, all I think about is this. How does a man of color prove his innocence to a bitter white judge? The odds are not in my favor, and maybe never will be. As I'm walking into the first day of my trial, I step into the courtroom and I see my family sitting there, drawn to tears. I look up at the judge, stand, and make eye contact with him. He's a man known for being lenient with white men, but harsh on Black men. My eyes trace the jury. To my surprise, I see some men of color sitting there. Somehow, I managed to find a sliver of hope during this dark time. As I sit through all the days of my trial, I can't help but look into the eyes of the jury member. I plead with my body, hoping to share the pain I'm feeling. I can't take this anymore. I'm not fit for jail. The system is messed up. By Haley Klitzner.
Violence never really deals with the basics of evil of the situation. Violence may murder the murder, but it doesn't murder murder. Violence may murder the liar, but it doesn't murder the lie. It doesn't establish truth. Violence may even murder the dishonest man, but it doesn't murder dishonesty. Violence may go to the point of murdering the hater, but it doesn't murder hate. It may increase hate. It is always a descending spiral leading nowhere. This is the ultimate weakness of violence. It multiplies evil and violence in the universe. It doesn't solve any problems. Martin Luther King Jr.
When you hear about things happening on the news, you never really expect them to happen to you. No matter how much you tell yourself to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, you're never truly ready to be thrown into one of those situations. Whenever I learn about the most recent tragedy or injustice, the most I'm able to feel is empathy and maybe fear. Because what else can you feel? You can't just go through life expecting every bad thing to happen to you. That's no way to live. I always end up telling myself that the likelihood of actually experiencing something like that is pretty slim, just like the likelihood of getting into a plane crash or a boat sinking. Maybe I should have been more paranoid. Maybe I should have had lower expectations for humanity. Maybe there's nothing I could have done to foresee it. You'd think that a peaceful protest would have been handled a bit more peacefully. Shouting, pushing, shoving, tear gas. It was disgusting. We were only a crowd of people holding signs demanding justice and equality. Real equality. And the police decide that we were somehow dangerous. More dangerous than them, the ones with the guns and dogs and gas. But they didn't seem to care. Apparently walking down a street and holding a sign makes you a threat to society or something. We were one of the smaller crowds, too, compared to others we knew of. But that didn't matter. Not to them. By Isabella Smith.
Political correctness as oversensitivity is code for saying the privileged should not have their unearned privileges questioned. Shane Stokes.
Your gender may not help to make me feel comfortable, but I will absolutely defend your right to live in a way that doesn't require you to make me feel comfortable. Your skin color may not be my skin color, but I will absolutely defend your right to live in your own skin just as much as I live in mine. Your religion or absence of any religion may not align with my own beliefs, but I will absolutely defend your right to believe in anything or nothing at all. Since I'm a human too, I will defend your birthright to be the kind of human that you are. C. Joy Bell.
We are a nation of many nationalities, many races, many religions bound together by a single unity, the unity of freedom and equality. Whoever seeks to set one nationality against each other seeks to degrade all nationalities. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
You will no longer have to worry about not having a choice. You will no longer be punished for nothing more than a crime. My mother said, "Darling, go on and live out your dreams and don't look back. Free yourself from the brutal labor, the cold chains, the hunger, the desperation. Hurry, now go. They're coming and don't let them catch you." Why can't we just be truly equally? Why can't we just be free? Why are we being dehumanized? I just want to be free. I just want to be truly equally. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Why do we get really like some treacherous fugitives by Dana Patron?
If anyone makes you feel less than you are, for the color of your skin, for where you come from, for the gender of the person you love, for the religion you have faith in, stand up, speak up, roar. No silence till we are equal. Dasari Wanyarachi.
We become not a melting pot, but a beautiful mosaic. Different people, different beliefs, different yearnings, different hopes, different dreams. President Jimmy Carter.
Haven't cages gone out of style? Is the splitting of families really necessary? Is HDQ neutral a replacement for oxygen? Are these not people too? The separation of nationality based off of a border is enough to determine if someone's set to live freely or not in this world. Our country and its grossly ironic motto, boasting itself the land of the free, only creates lies, false promises that lure in hopeful souls from other countries into the bitter jaws of captivity for our entire nation to see and watch. And as this horrible, horrible situation goes down, and this disgusting miasma wriggles its way into the noses of the denizens in this country, we just sit back and watch. And if I were to say any of us cared, I'd be lying. We're just going to continue watching until it's another crushed can or scrap of confetti left behind by our horrible parade of the media that makes our promise seem like a joke or just gossip. It's a real modern spectacle that we as a nation sit back and watch humans be herded into camps that are sprayed down with bleach so often that the air itself is corrosive. These are humans, mind you. But laws allow us to treat them otherwise. The only thing separating us is a magical border that we've constructed. And it's this very border that labels them as inferior beasts. Cruel and unusual aren't words that can apply to them or save them. They have no voices. Their cries are gagged by their subhuman status. And as punishment for their beliefs in our lies that they could live better here, we're going to lock them up for 90 days, separating them from their kids, their parents, their families, pack them in real nice and good into cramped facilities during a pandemic, and send them right back, just to let them know that they're worth less than the dirt beneath our boots. Rashawn Watkins.
Equality of condition, though it is certainly a basic requirement for justice, is nevertheless among the greatest and most uncertain ventures of modern mankind. The more equal conditions are, the less explanation there is for the differences that actually exist between people, and thus all the more unequal do individuals and groups become. This perplexing consequence came fully to light as soon as equality was no longer seen in terms of an omnipotent being like God or an unavoidable common destiny like death. Whenever equality becomes a mundane fact in itself, without any gauge by which it can be measured or explained, then there is one chance in 100 that it will be recognized simply as a working principle of a political organization in which otherwise unequal people have equal rights. There are 99 chances that it will be mistaken for an innate quality of an individual who is normal if he is like everybody else and abnormal if he happens to be different. This perversion of equality from a political into social concept is all the more dangerous when society leaves but little space for special groups and individuals, for then their differences become all the more conspicuous. Hannah Arendt.
Throughout my time in school, I would hear all about the momentous time when America was able to gain its independence. I would hear all about the famous words written in our country's Declaration of Independence. I would hear that all men are created equal. I would hear that they are all born with the natural right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But when they wrote that document, there was an indeterminate meaning by what they meant by all men. Following the lessons on the American Revolution, I learned about slavery in the United States and the amazing fight put up to end it. I came across the year 1868 in my textbook. The year 1868 was viewed as a year where everything would change for the former black brothers and sisters living in the United States. But the 14th Amendment did not put an end to the fight. It was only part of the beginning. Next in my history textbook came the Civil Rights Movement. I learned about all the figures: Brown versus Board of Education, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, March on Washington, Barack Obama. I grew chills hearing about the empowering movements that were taking place, and I closed my history textbook with the satisfaction of knowing that change had been finally made.
but I soon realized just how much of it. Almost 152 years later, and here we are, fighting the same fight. I see headlines all across social media. They claim that we are equals, yet they continue to discriminate. The 14th Amendment has abandoned the black citizens in the United States. The 14th Amendment has lost its purpose. The 14th Amendment must be reclaimed. So I say to you, the United States of America, I want change and I demand change. We want change, and we will continue to fight until we see change.
We may live under different roofs. We share the same sunlight. Lufina Lord Duraj.